Coming up next on KPBS Evening Edition, a protest over a change to policy for trucks coming into the U.S. from Mexico.
And Social Security recipients will soon get their first cost of living raise in years, about $40 a month. How much of a difference will it make?
KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Joanne Ferrian.
And I'm Dwayne Brown. San Diego Gas and Electric is asking for a new fee for solar power customers.
We'll talk with a representative from the company in just a few minutes. But first, tonight's top stories. The National Teamsters president came to San Diego today. Jimmy Hoffa Jr. was speaking out against a pilot program that will allow Mexican trucks to carry goods to any U.S. city. Joining me to discuss the issue is KPBS business reporter Eric Anderson. Eric, this issue isn't new. Why has it come up again?
Well, the issue came up because starting this week, probably on Friday, the first Mexican truck is going to be authorized to drive anywhere in the United States. The Department of Transportation has developed a program that will allow that to finally happen. If you think back to 1994, that's when NAFTA was actually signed and when this idea was first put on the table. But it's been fought against by groups like the Teamsters. And again, the Teamsters are speaking out just like they were today at the border when Jimmy Hoffa was gathering with his supporters to talk out about this issue.
This basically is a program that is playing Russian roulette with our highway safety in the United States. We will have unsafe trucks from Mexico, untrained drivers from Mexico on our highways. Now, this is not a new issue. We have talked about this for the last 20 years, and no matter what we do, we still have a double standard.
And that double standard that he's talking about is, of course, different safety rules for Mexican drivers and U.S. drivers. Department of Transportation officials say that the Mexican drivers will be under extra scrutiny. They'll have to pass a series of tests to make sure their trucks are safe in the U.S. The Teamsters says it's going to cost U.S. jobs, that companies will hire Mexican drivers instead of U.S. drivers, and they have some congressional backing for their position. Duncan Hunter and Bob Filner, opposite ends of the political spectrum today, both arguing that this pilot program should be dropped.
And of course, we'll have more on this later in the show. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson.
San Diego's finance office says the city faces budget deficits for the next 4 years. Next year's shortfall will be nearly $32 million by 2017. City staff expects a budget surplus. The report does say next year's deficit is about $9 million less than originally expected. Revenue from sales, property, and hotel room taxes are expected to keep going up, but there is still uncertainty over the housing market and state budget.
Local and federal authorities have been cracking down on San Diego's medical marijuana community. KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr sat down with the man behind San Diego's crackdown, City Attorney Jan Goldsmith. Katie, why is Goldsmith doing this?
Well, he says that he was waiting for the city council to take some action. They've been working on a city ordinance regulating where these dispensaries could locate for the past 2 years, and they eventually did pass something. Medical marijuana advocates were not happy with that. The city council ended up overturning that ordinance, and Goldsmith says after that the number of dispensaries within the city spiked.
We started seeing a spike, and it really got to the point there were some alarm bells that went off in that they were just opening wherever they wanted, near schools, near residential areas, near parks, playgrounds, libraries, and we had to put an end to that.
He says at one point there were more than 180 dispensaries operating within the city.
Katie, what does Goldsmith hope to accomplish in the end?
Well, he says that his job is to enforce the law. Right now, the law does not allow for any dispensaries because there are no zones where those dispensaries can operate. So the way he sees it, his job is to enforce the law. That includes sending out letters to these dispensaries telling them that they need to shut down.
KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr.
I recently told you about the Elderly Index and how it shows 4 out of 10 seniors in San Diego County are struggling to make ends meet every month. Today we learned many of those seniors will be getting a cost of living increase beginning in January if they receive Supplemental Security Income, or SSI. We went to another senior center to find out if $40 more a month would make a difference. There's a reason why they call this the Fun Center for adults 60 years and over here in the College area. Have more on that in just a moment. Many of the daily visitors are in their 80s and 90s, but still very active. After lunch, it's line dancing lessons. This man used to help provide global disaster relief in third world countries. Now he's just struggling to keep the lights on and pay for food each month. As for the cost of living increase,
it would make a difference, but $40 won't buy a tank of gas. In my case, I have an very old car, 22 years. It takes $80 to fill up the tank.
That's one reason why this man everyone calls Superman
up and away
uses an alternative method to get around after his car was stolen. He says the increase will be very helpful.
However, you have to remember that some of us who are on Social Security and or disability have recently had cuts that far exceeded the $40 out of the total income that we were receiving. So it's good to have it as long as they don't keep chopping at the basic amount that we get now.
Now, the cost of living increase will affect the checks of about 8 million seniors starting on January 1st. That's about 1 out of 5 who receive SSI. Now, a moment ago, we told you about today's protest at the border over change in trucking policies. Joanne has some analysis of the change with her guest at the KPBS Evening Edition Roundtable.
As you just heard, Mexican transport trucks will begin driving across the U.S. border this week, a road trip that has been 17 years in the making. Under the North American Free Trade Agreement, ratified in 1994, the trucks were supposed to be able to travel to the U.S. with their goods. To tell us what happened between then and now is James Gerber, Director of the International Business Program at SDSU and Professor of Economics. Jim, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So take us back to 1994. What happened?
So in 94, the NAFTA agreement set out a timetable for Mexican trucks to enter the U.S. and U.S. trucks to enter Mexico. It would be phased in over a 5-year period. It was intended that by 99, Mexican trucks would have complete access to the U.S. and U.S. trucks would have complete access to Mexico. But the U.S. decided not to implement that part of the NAFTA agreement. There were concerns at the time about, the expressed concerns were about the environment and about truck safety. In fact, I think that this was an issue that in some sense played perfectly for both Republicans and Democrats, so it got caught up in the American domestic political situation.
So what happened between then and now that's caused this situation where they've finally reached an agreement?
Well, there were a series of negotiations back and forth between the United States and Mexico, which basically led nowhere. We would have a breakthrough and then the U.S. Again would stall on implementation. So Mexico filed a complaint under the NAFTA dispute resolution mechanism and was found that it was determined that the U.S. was in violation of its treaty obligations under NAFTA. So Mexico tried to use that to get the U.S. to open the market. We decided not to. So Mexico imposed then in 2009 about $2 billion worth of tariffs on U.S. goods, mostly agricultural goods, but also some manufactured goods. When they did that, it created a domestic constituency in the United States that suddenly had a stake and an interest in seeing both of these markets opened up. And so there began to be pressure then on the Obama administration to finally resolve this issue that had been lingering.
You mentioned $2 billion. We want to show some numbers to our audience right now in terms of what we're talking about. This is a big industry, $1 billion a day in trade, 70% by truck. We just saw earlier in the newscast that we've got the Teamsters protesting this. This is 17 years. They finally reach a deal. Isn't this a done deal? Why the protest?
Well, I think, Teamsters work long hours. It's a hard job, and they don't earn a lot of money. I think from their perspective, they're looking at this as increased competition with Mexican truck drivers that are paid less than they are, and they see this as potentially some downward pressure on their wages.
Do you think it will have pressure on the wages?
I think that the impact will be minimal. I think that there might be a slight impact, but I don't think that there's going to be a very strong impact on wages or incomes in the U.S. or on the number of jobs in the U.S. I think from the Teamsters' perspective, I think this is what they should have been arguing all along, not arguing about safety, which is a red herring, is not really an issue, not arguing about environmental standards, another red herring, but they should have been arguing why is it that American working people put in long hours, work hard and still can't earn a decent living.
Quickly before we go, Jim, you mentioned environmental concerns, and that was a concern in terms of emissions. You don't think that's going to be an issue, though. Why not?
I think that this actually could improve the situation with respect to emissions. In the past, Mexican truck companies had invested lots of money in new trucks, which were very clean, but they would drive them to the border, and they would have to wait sometimes up to 23, 24 hours to get across the border, only to go 20 miles farther into the U.S. So they made a rational decision, which was, why use your expensive, best capital equipment, which you need to be earning money with, to wait in line at the border? So what they would do is they would drop their trailers, and they would have short-haul, dirtier vehicles that would pick them up and drive them across the border because they could only go 20 miles into the
Now they're going to go back to the clean trucks.
Now they're more likely now, if they can drive farther into the U.S., to use their long-haul vehicles, which are in good shape.
James Gerber, SDSU, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Last week, we told you San Diego Gas and Electric is asking for a $1.5 billion rate increase over the next 4 years. Included in the increase is a new fee to solar customers. In just a moment, we'll talk with SDG&E and a representative from the solar industry. And we'll have a look at how refugees in San Diego are trying to preserve their health and traditions. This is KPBS Evening Edition.
Tonight on KPBS at 8, the lives of wolves and other wildlife thriving in the dead zone that surrounds the Chernobyl nuclear reactor. Radioactive wolves on Nature. Then at 9, learn how scientists are using technology to answer one of the greatest questions in history. Are we alone? On Nova. And at 11, learn about the intricate preparations for the Phoenix Mars mission on Ashes to Ice. That's all tonight on KPBS.
The American people have named PBS
the most trusted source of news and public affairs for the 8th year in a row.
Trust.
The American people have spoken. Thank you.
I'm Margaret Warner. On the next news hour, the high stakes in tonight's Republican presidential debate in Nevada. That's Wednesday on the PBS NewsHour.
KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Irwin Jacobs and by
San Diego City Heights neighborhood has been nicknamed the refugee capital of America. Last year, resettlement workers assisted more than 5,000 new arrivals to San Diego, and most ended up in City Heights. Among the many things these newcomers have had to adjust to is their diet. From our Fronteras desk, Roxandra Guidi tells us about a family trying to navigate between food traditions, good health, and American lifestyle.
Like many other boys their age, the Nuno brothers and their neighbors like to play pickup basketball or soccer. Back in Somalia, kids would play a lot outside. That's what their parents say, at least, to remind them to stay active. Once inside the house, the boys wait for dinner. The women shuffle around, trying to get a variety of Somali dishes done. It's Sunday evening, so friends and neighbors are pitching in to have a big traditional feast. Mana Ahmed Mohammed came to San Diego with her husband and her oldest son in 1997. One of the things she found most challenging about being here, she says, was finding the kinds of foods that were acceptable by her faith, Islam.
When I came here, it was difficult, really, because it's different what we eat in our country and here. First years, I had hard time to choose what I eat, what I cook for my children, everything. Then I learned how to, some people, they help me how I choose halal food, because here every food we want to choose, they had something like a pork or alcohol we cannot eat.
Eventually, she found out the shops catering to Somalis. She discovered the farmers market where they sell the collard greens she loves, and the halal butcher shops. But as her 4 kids grew up, Mana noticed they loved the same junk food that non-immigrant American kids do.
They eat in fruits, banana. They like banana a lot and apple too, but they don't like spinach. It's very hard. Even American children also, I know.
I like to go to Jack in the Box. Yeah. I like to go to In-N-Out. And I like ice cream and pizza.
So when your mom makes a big Somali food feast like she did tonight, are you going to find that tasty, or are you going to want to eat it? Or are you going to think, I want a burger from In-N-Out?
I would rather eat that. Yeah, I would rather eat that.
The girls still love to eat homemade sambusa, a Somali pastry filled with ground beef typically eaten around Ramadan. Mana can't find the special dough used to make the pastries, so she improvises with Mexican tortillas cut in half. Sambusa are typically fried and fatty, not all that healthy either. But Mana says sambusas are still better for her family, better than frozen dinners or junk food like McDonald's.
Somalian people, they believe American food, they have something to become fat. That's why we try to eat our food and look our stores everywhere.
Unlike most Americans, Somali refugees like to cook from scratch with fresh ingredients, making the same dishes they would eat at home. And after 14 years of adapting to life in the U.S., Mana also now makes a conscious effort to walk more, eat less, and go to the gym. Rather than play too much at the computer, Mana's kids spend more time involved in their Somali community. They're good students and good Muslims.
When I was growing up, my parents wanted me to focus more on like school, religion, and just being a healthy person. They didn't want me to be in front of the TV 24/7, so they advised me to do other things with my time.
Right before dinner time, the call for prayer begins. Neighbors and friends join Mana and her kids. The oldest boy in the group leads the practice. In a matter of minutes, the prayer mats are taken away and replaced by a tablecloth laid out on the living room floor. Their dinner is a mix of traditional dishes, high on carbohydrates and mostly fried, but balanced out by fruit, salad, and smoothies. Mana says her family doesn't often get a chance to eat like this together. But as hard as they try, the American lifestyle has crept in. For the first generation, the struggle is in staying thin and fending off diabetes. For the kids, it's staying away from the appeal of fast food joints.
Somehow, I don't know, we cannot stop him. Many people, they were skinny, now they're becoming fat.
That was KPBS reporter Roxandra Guidi. Tomorrow, we visit an East African cooking class, helping moms bridge cultural gaps by passing their cooking traditions on to their American teenagers.
As we told you last week, San Diego Gas and Electric is asking the California Public Utilities Commission for a $1.5 billion rate increase over the next 4 years. The utility also wants solar users to pay more for using the grid. In its application to the PUC, the power company has asked to charge solar users a fee ranging from $11 to $22 a month. In a moment, we'll hear why from SDG&E, and we'll have a response from the solar industry. But first, take a look at a typical solar customer's bill. A typical solar customer might contribute excess power during the day while the sun is shining and draw on the grid at night. Look at this bill. The customer owes $5.39, and that includes a $5.10 SDG&E connection charge and 29 cents in taxes. This customer generated enough power on his own. Joining me now are J.C. Thomas, SDG&E's Manager for Government and Regulatory Affairs, and Daniel Sullivan of Sullivan Solar Power. And in an effort of full disclosure, Sullivan Solar Power is a KPBS underwriter. Thank you, gentlemen, both for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
J.C., let's start with you. If solar customers are already contributing to the power grid right now, why do you want to charge them an additional fee?
Yeah, in the state of California, we actually have to charge all of our customers the same. The rate structure has to be the same for everyone, whether you have solar or not. And we have a rate design in place that's about 15 years old, and it didn't contemplate the use of renewable technology and including solar on the customer side of the meter. And so we're redesigning our rates to ensure that all customers pay their their fair share for using the distribution system that runs on their streets, in their neighborhood streets.
So right now, don't most solar customers generate more power during the day than they use?
They do, and we take that power and we condition it. We make sure that it's available for other customers, and then we credit back the solar customer for all of the energy that they generate.
So how much do you pay them during the day for that power?
Well, that's an interesting question because it's a tiered rate structure. And in the highest tiers, they're getting paid or compensated about 31 cents per kilowatt, which is the full retail rate of electricity. That includes all the services that we provide, you know, a trouble men and call center.
So do you not have a difference between what you pay them and then what you can then sell that power for? SDG&E does not have a difference. They get paid what you sell that power for?
Well, when it goes into the mix of power resources that we have, and our wholesale rate is somewhere around 8 cents, our bundled wholesale rate for electricity. And so when a solar customer is generating electricity, we're paying them the higher rates, and they're getting credit for that. They're actually not getting money. They're getting a credit on their bill.
So, Daniel, in terms of a solar customer right now, what do they pay on their bill in terms of contributing to the grid?
That depends. There's many different types of solar customers, but if a customer completely eliminates their consumption from the grid, they will pay a fee of $5.10 per month for being connected to the grid for the meter that's on their house. Customers who don't generate 100% of their electricity will have that charge plus anything they do consume on a monthly basis.
So would solar customers argue they're contributing to the grid? Why are they paying more now? Why does SDG&E want to ask them to pay more?
Yes, we have 800 plus customers. Many of them have called. Nothing short of an outrage, upset that SDG&E intends to charge them what they call a network use fee for using the grid to export energy. The reason why they're upset is that they're very familiar with how the energy flows on the grid, and the energy is just flowing next door to the next door neighbor's house, and then the next door neighbor is paying for that distribution charge that SDG&E is trying to capture through their new rate case.
JC, I think there are people at home who would say, look, these are the people who, they're doing the right thing by the environment. They're contributing to their neighbors, and yet SDG&E has sort of set it up that they're pitting neighbor against neighbor. What do you say to them?
Well, we're trying to create a fair and equitable system for the future. And this is a long-term plan, long-term commitment on our part to ensure that whoever wants to put solar on their house, that they can do that, and that there's a fair and equitable way of doing so. Right now, what we're seeing is that if you don't have solar, it's costing you about $35 a year. If you're a higher user of energy, Tier 3 and Tier 4 we call it, you're spending an extra $35 a year for the person who doesn't or who has solar. We see that growing to about $200 per year if we see the penetration. I think if Dan sees the penetration we'd all like to see of rooftop solar in our community, that cost is going to increase. And so what we're trying to do is address that now before it becomes a bigger problem.
JC, do you agree with these numbers?
Well, I'm Dan, he's JC.
Oh, sorry, Daniel, do you agree with these numbers?
I have a hard time accepting those at face value. I would like to see the backup data that substantiates that, and the reason why I challenge it is because there's 105 million watts of power out there across over 12,000 systems. These systems are producing power on peak, and it's not very simple to do a complete analysis of it because everybody pays at different rates at different times of day and for different levels of usage. But the fact does remain there's 105 million watts solar power plant basically that SDG&E got for free that's producing power on peak. That energy is going to help offset the peak demand that SDG&E sees during the afternoon summers where it's very expensive to generate electricity. So I would put forth that it's likely that SDG&E is actually generating revenue off the solar producers because of the example I gave you earlier. That energy is going and it's getting used in the grid here.
Before we go, I just want to move on. As we told our audience earlier, SDG&E is asking for a $1.5 billion increase over the next 4 years. Two watchdog agencies, in fact, one for the state, the DRA, and also UCAN, have both said rates should go down based on your financials, not up. What do you say to the people at home?
Yeah, about every 3 years, we have to put forward a plan to the Public Utilities Commission that includes our cost of providing service, and it's a forward-looking plan, and it's based upon the technology that that's being used today and the requirements that we have on us from a safety and regulatory standpoint to serve our customers, to make sure that we provide safe and reliable service to our entire service territory, San Diego County and Orange County.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, but I know we're going to be hearing more about this in the weeks to come. Thank you both, gentlemen, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A recap of our top stories and the latest on the political Twitter flap in San Diego just ahead. This is KPBS Evening Edition.
Access to local food is tough in city heights. It's easy for someone to find the nearest store is a liquor store, and they buy their food from a liquor store. So this is a practical example of urban area that was mainly asphalt that's been converted to a garden, because most urban lots are not large, so people need to think of how to maximize production.
I'm glad they took over some pavement and put some soil on it and started growing stuff. I think that's a great idea.
Next time on the PBS Arts Fall Festival, American Masters presents Pearl Jam 20.
The door is so open for us to be who we are.
It's the untold story of one of America's greatest bands.
Every once in a while, we'll just say to one another, like, can you believe it?
American Masters presents Pearl Jam 20, directed by Cameron Crowe. Next time on the PBS Arts Fall Festival.
Friday at 9 on KPBS.
Welcome back to the Public Square and KPBS Evening Edition. Tonight, a couple of follow-ups. A few weeks ago, President Barack Obama was in San Diego to raise money for the 2012 presidential campaign. California has always had deep political pockets, especially for Democrats. But it turns out San Diego County's pockets are especially deep for Republican candidate Michelle Bachmann. We looked at third quarter filings, and according to OpenSecrets.org, San Diego made the list of the top 5 cities contributing to Bachmann's campaign at $49,500. And Rancho Santa Fe was the third most generous zip code in the country, contributing more than $22,000. Now, one more update. Remember San Diego Republican Chair Tony Kriveric was in some hot water last week over posing as a number of Democrats on Twitter. Well, Twitter gave him his account back today. Kriveric told us a thoughtful review of the facts, not at San Diego Dems hyperbole, rightfully resulted in a complete restoration of my account. If you want to be part of this conversation, you can follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and of course, you can email us. And now, Dwayne has a recap of tonight's top stories.
Union leaders and 2 San Diego area congressmen joined forces today to protest a policy change. It'll allow Mexican trucks into the U.S. They say safety and American jobs are at stake. And San Diego's Budget Committee has received a bleak fiscal outlook for the next 5 years, with deficits projected until 2017. You can watch and comment on any of the stories you saw tonight on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. We leave you with a look at the forecast. Good night.